So I want to start with what I thought was a really, really good question about the markets. So, hi there. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining. Um, and I'm just going to see if I can see who it is. I can't. Okay. So the first question is the writer wrote, I'm trying to understand the markets. I know the markets and the economy are not the same. But with such high unemployment and everyone freaking out about the coming recession or the recession that's actually here, why are we having these stock market rallies? Okay, let's take a couple minutes on this because this is a really interesting question. So the first thing is yes, I think that's correct. The stock market is not a reflection of the economy. It's a very, very leading indicator. In other words, the stock market was in a mess in March, as everyone probably remembers, but unemployment had not dropped off a cliff until April, right? So it's a leading indicator. So you might think, good, well, we're having a rally now. Does that mean that we're going to come right out of this recession as soon as everybody goes back to work, etc.? Well, first of all, there are two things to remember. There's always two things, right? The first thing is that this is what's called a mini bear rally. It's a rally within a recession. And a lot of times after there's a big sell-off, big institutional buyers will come back in to buy things up that are super cheap. And if they're doing that, they are, hey Alyssa, hey Chamika, thanks for joining. If they're buying super cheap things that they couldn't get 2 months ago, like say in January or February, and if it's a big enough player like CalPERS from California or something like the California Pension Plan, it's going to create a mini rally. So that's the first thing to remember. This is probably short-lived. It is probably just people buying because they see cheap things. Hey, Paul, thanks for joining. It's probably something like that. The second thing to remember is sit back and think about who might be benefiting here, right? If you think really hard, you don't even need to think that hard. Amazon, Facebook, Google, the usual suspects. Hey, Sarah, thanks for joining. The usual suspects are benefiting during lockdown, right? They're either, they're either delivering stuff, which of course is flying off the shelves now, or they're allowing people to do what I'm doing right now and still communicate with other people. So they're benefiting. And here's the thing: is they take up like 30 something percent of the S&P 500. They call them the unicorns. The big tech companies. It's Facebook, Alphabet/Google, Amazon, Microsoft. Gosh, I think the other one's Netflix. I'm not sure. And they're pulling the S&P 500 ahead as you see it going now. The NASDAQ is not even below its levels in February. So there's a slight distortion in the market because of those players. Having said that, what's happening in the market shouldn't matter too much to you. Unless you're Jeff Bezos, which I don't think he's watching me right now, but maybe he is. But anyway, for long-term retail investors, what you want to do is have a long-term plan, not market time, keep your fees low, keep your diversity high, stay in your index funds and your passive investing, and ignore the day-to-day bumps of the market. Ignore them. This is not time to rebalance. This is not time to do any of that. It's time to turn away from the market and think about the immediate things that are being affected by the economy, which we said at the beginning of this is different than the markets. What's being affected by the economy? Your job potentially, your salary potentially, your, maybe you've refied or you're trying to refi, maybe you're trying to buy a house, what's happening in the housing market, what's happening to your money market fund, right? You were getting 2% in early March, you're getting 1.3% now. those are the things that you should be thinking about. How much cash do I have in case there's an emergency? Those are the things for you to be thinking about. Do I have to replace a car? Do I have to do it during the crisis? Can I wait? The everyday things are what you should be thinking about, and you should not be thinking too much about the ups and downs of the market. But there is a distortion out there due to the, unicorns. Okay, Sarah, I got a question from you. Thank you. If my salary been cut, should I change? Oh, you know what? That's so funny. I have the same question as somebody wrote in about that. So Sarah's asking if her salary's been cut, should she change her retirement contribution? So today we were going to do sort of a theme about saving for retirement during the COVID crisis. So what I'm going to do, if it's okay with everybody, is I'm going to park Sarah's question until we get into that. I'm just going to answer two or three more other questions that I got, and then we'll spend the rest of the time just talking about retirement savings in the COVID crisis. I hope that's okay with you, Sarah. Give me a couple minutes, 2 minutes. Here, somebody wrote in and said, I'm getting unemployment and I'm getting the federal step up, the $600 step up. Should I still request a forbearance on my mortgage? So should you still request a forbearance on the mortgage? So the thing to ask yourself about the forbearance on the mortgage is, can you pay the mortgage normally if you have your unemployment? And I don't know if you have a spouse who's still working or whatever's going on with your partner, or you're a single household. Can you still pay it? Do you have cash reserves? So if you don't have at least $3,000, if you're a homeowner and this person must be, otherwise they wouldn't have a mortgage, $3,000 of reserve cash for things that break, water heaters, all that stuff doesn't care. They don't care. The water heater doesn't care about the virus, right? If it's going to break, it's going to break. So if you don't have $3,000 for repairs and rainy day items, car repairs, that kind of thing. If you don't have at least 3 months of emergency savings, that's a total of your expenses for a total loss of income. So if your household uses $5,000 a month, all in for all of its expenses, I would want you to have $15,000 sitting in a bank account for emergencies in case someone loses their job, and then $3,000 for rainy day items like water heaters and car repairs. That's a lot of cash. I recognize that. So if you're not in that, I don't know about privileged position, but that well-planned position that I just described, if you don't have the $3,000, right, then I do suggest trying to get forbearance on the mortgage if and only if, I hope everyone heard me, if and only if the payback of the forbearance is at the end of the mortgage. We talked about this, I think it was 2 weeks ago. It bears repeating. If you decide to go for a forbearance of your mortgage or your car payment or anything else, student loans are different because they're already in forbearance until September 30th. You must know when the forbearance, when the monthly payments that you didn't pay come due. If you're not careful, sometimes they could come due right when you go back onto your pay schedule. So if you get forbearance for 3 payments and today is June 1st, then on September 1, you could owe 3 payments plus the interest in what's called a balloon payment. Or it could just be the interest that's owed on September 1, and then they add the payments to the end of the mortgage. The best of all options is if they just add all 3 payments plus the interest to the end of the mortgage. If you don't have option 3 that I just went over, please, forbearance is a very, very, very last resort. And the only reason to do it now, if you're getting unemployment and you're able to live on the unemployment, is if you don't have $3,000 of cash in case something goes wrong. In which case, here in the district at least, that's like 1 mortgage payment for most people. I would just do the forbearance for 1 month and keep that $3,000 so that you have some cash in case something goes wrong. I just gave you a lot. I hope if anyone has any questions that they're going to let me know, because that was a lot to throw at you. Next question, second question, before I go to the retirement one. This is sort of retirement related, but so RMDs stands for required minimum distribution. So when you save into your 401k, unless it's a Roth, you are not paying taxes now. And then when you retire, which is sometime after being 59 and a half years old, when you take the distributions from that retirement fund, it could be an IRA, it could be a 401k, whatever, 403b. When you take money out for your living expenses, that money is taxed as income. Now, if you can live on your Social Security and maybe you have a pension from somewhere and you don't require the funds that are in your savings account to live, you're going to leave them in there. Well, the IRS wants its pound of flesh, right? It allowed you to save it tax-free, and it wants to get paid. And so at the age of 72, it will force you to take what's called required minimum distributions. That means you have to take money out so that it can tax your income on it. Now, during the COVID crisis, you do not have to pay required minimum distributions during the time of COVID. You will as soon as that is over. I believe right now it's just until July 31st, but don't quote me on that because it's changing every day. So if you turn 72 in this year, in 2020, or are over 72 years old, you get a little forbearance on your on your required minimum distribution payment, at least until July 31st. But then afterwards, you're going to have to take it and you're going to have to pay that. It'll be on your taxes. I'm not 100% sure that may be for the entire tax year of 2020, or it may just be until July 31st. Either way, it's something to look up if you're in that situation, but you do not have to take them now, okay? And so now I'd like to turn, unless somebody has another question, and let me just scroll up because I'm on my phone. Okay. So now I'd like to start on what is supposed to be sort of the theme of today, which is saving for retirement during the COVID crisis, and what we're adding to that is if you have debt. So let's hit Sarah's question first. If you have a salary reduction, right? You've either had it reduced, or they said, no raises, or they said no bonuses, or your commission's been cut, or whatever it is, should you still be saving for your 403b or your 401k? The answer is emphatically yes. Now, let's get all the specifics. If you can, in other words, if you were making $100 and they've reduced your pay to $80, and you need every dollar of that $80 for your monthly expenses, then you may not be able to save at the rate you were saving before. But to the extent that you can still save at the rate you were saving previously, I strongly recommend that you continue to do it. First of all, the market's a little cheaper now, so whatever you're buying into it, you're getting at a really good price, and you have that, our old friend compounding, which is like awesome, right? So if you have it set to a percentage, right, which some of you guys do, and your salary has gone down, my rule of thumb for my clients is always the minimum you should be saving for retirement is 15% of your gross. So if you make $100,000 a year, I want somehow for you to save $15,000 into a retirement plan. Now, you may get a match of 5% from your employer, which means you only need to save $10,000 and the employer is going to put $5,000 in as a match for you. So if you were making $100,000 and your salary went down to $80,000, that 15% reduces as well. That's fine for right now, because I know it doesn't feel like it, but the COVID crisis is really short term when it comes to retirement savings. So if you can just keep the same retirement percentage, if you are fine, if your reduction in pay has allowed you to continue with life as normal, which is a really fortunate few, then keep the same dollar amount that you were saving. All of this basically